Hey, we just finished recording an interview with someone who experienced a near-death experience. So we were exploring energy and the space that people go when they have a near-death experience, and for those obviously that come back to tell the situation and to recount their story, what their experience was during and after. There's a lot more I've learnt in what happens after with people's own conscious awareness. One could say energy gifts, perhaps intuition, intuitive gifts, or skills, not necessarily gifts, but skills that become a lot more enhanced. But something that came out of this interview quite unexpected was this interviewee's husband was also here with us. And we learnt that he's been battling a cancer for 20 years now. And it hadn't occurred to me until they opened the discussion that here is one spouse dealing with a situation that is known to be life-threatening and that brings imminent death for many much quicker than anticipated. And at the same time, here we have the interviewee, his wife, that had experienced a near-death experience, actually transitioned through death, explains her specifics, which will be part of the interview that we'll look to edit into the documentary, and come back from this space that is an imminent, life-threatening death space that her husband faces with treatment for cancer. And that whole dynamic of the two of them together, to have this story between them, and yet the cancer isn't something that is a fear-based experience for them. We managed to get some insight from her husband in his very humble expressions about how much he's seen her growth and development as she's come out talking more about the near-death experience and how her experience has helped many others. But in the fact that he's also faced with the joy of seeing someone who's returned from this near-death experience, chose to come back into this life and bring such positivity and joy and actual excitement about this afterlife, this thing we call death in the Western world. And as another of our interviewees in New York highlighted, that we've lost the art of dying in our conscious awareness in this Western world. We fear death a lot more than perhaps our ancestors did decades or centuries or thousands, millennia ago. And it's bringing up the whole joy around death. As much as we grieve as humans and we feel the loss of that human that we've lost in our lives, and all of us have experienced this to some degree, whether it be a person or a pet, a situation that we've lost, but particularly humans losing humans, and the grief and loss that goes with that, and how stuck it can get us in understanding that death, potentially understanding afterlife if that's a part of your belief system, and how you relate to that. But to see this couple where there is someone who's experienced a near-death experience come back and sharing joy about an excitement of that space, that afterlife as she called it, the other side as she called it, and while she's not doing anything to want it to happen any sooner than her time, is certainly not being a risk taker or pushing the edge to get to that space again. She just has a remarkable appreciation for what happens in the afterlife, or what it feels like, what the sensations are like, and how it expanded her awareness, expanded her experience and her sensations, that she now speaks about it so joyously without the fear of this death, without the fear of passing over, however we might refer to it. And that her husband, who has this life-threatening illness, is managing it and actually enjoying life with her. And it's been a long 20 years. Didn't sound like there was anything imminent around the corner with regard to death on his part. But it really raised that question: how do we view death? How do you view death? Do you have fears around it? Where did those fears come from? What beliefs do you have about death or the afterlife or the other side? For some, there are people that intrinsically know, yeah, we have a lot of past lives, this isn't our only one. And for others, there's just nothing of that sort of thought or belief there. Now, where did those beliefs come from? I'm not saying there's a right or wrong, but it's a really valid an enriching area to reflect on for yourself when we're trying to understand us as human beings and in this skin, this earth suit that we're in. And what happens with this life? How do we live this life in a way that really has us appreciate it when we know for certain, the only thing we know for certain is that we will one day die. You know, this human body dies, its functions cease. And I know we joke a lot about the only certainties in life are death and taxes, and I don't really believe in the taxes part because they're changing a bunch these days too. Their certainty is always uncertain and changing, but death, that is an absolute certain. It's the one thing we absolutely know is on the cards for each and every one of us. None of us are exempt from it. Once we've chosen to come into this human body or be in this human body, however it is that comes about. So being able to simply explore, what is death? What would you think the art of dying actually is, if there is such a thing? What's the afterlife? You know, what do you consider to be the other side? Is it something to be concerned about? Is it something to be joyous about? And whilst we don't necessarily want to induce near-death experiences, be a rather remarkably dangerous act, in order to figure it out, part of this documentary is about exploring the energy levels and our energy dimensions to a degree that we can actually look at how we can raise our conscious awareness about them and experience them just as easily as I'm speaking with you. Some of us do it through meditation. There are many forms people use to enter a zone that could be parallel to what some near-death experience or out-of-body experience people describe as the afterlife or the other side. And we can actually experience it eyes open, fully awake, and refine our senses perhaps somehow so that we can experience it without having to have any crisis or near-death experience or induced states. It's a big area to think about, but it'd be great to hear some of your reflections on it. Even if you have any disagreements, that's absolutely fine. It's all part of having the discussion and the reflections about some topics that we sometimes just don't make time to reflect on. So what do you think about death? What do you think the art of dying might be? The afterlife, the other side. Have you experienced it? What was it like for you? What are your beliefs around it? And how could we perhaps tune ourselves in to experiencing some of that energy space, that realm, that dimension, however we refer to it and label it, in a way that we can do it in a manner that we're having a conversation, you and I, just now. Thanks. Let's explore that.